Welcome SharePoint Conference. Welcome to Happy Services or Content Services. Or
That's right.
Yeah.
Content Services.
Content Services.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm Chris.
I'm Sean.
And we're going to spend the next hour together. So show of hands, let's get to know each other. How many of you are at your first SharePoint conference?
Welcome. Wow.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Great. How many of you go back to at least SPC 2009? So a lot of long time and first time.
Yes.
It's like sports radio here. So that's great. So we really are excited to be able to come and talk to you. ECM and content services have been an accelerating workload for us at Microsoft, and we think we're on the cusp of being able to introduce you to some really exciting capabilities over the next hour.
Yeah, and as you can see here with our session goals, it really ties into, for those of you who caught the keynote yesterday and really the theme about connections and creation and the management of that stuff and the discovery of that stuff in the intelligent workplace. And so really what we want you guys to get out of this today is the importance of metadata. You've probably been hearing that a lot. We're going to talk about it again today in terms of like labels from compliance to tags on content and how all that comes together to really start to enable that intelligent workplace across your scenarios. And then obviously the evolution, we are a market leader, the product space, in the content management space, but there's a lot more that we want to do, and I know that you guys need, and so we want to just really emphasize the importance of the ongoing investments in the content services space and share those with you today. And then obviously the integration, really just how all these pieces start to come together to really fulfill end-to-end business scenarios.
So 6 major acts today. We're going to talk at the outset a little bit about how content services fits into the evolution of the modern workplace across M365. We're going to talk through our capabilities for how information gets created, how we manage it through the service, and how you can extend it into other places. We're going to wrap up with some customer stories, roadmap, and the usual things to get you a plan for how to implement this in your own environment. But along the way, we're going to have a very special guest from Brookfield Properties coming up to talk about their content services journey with their partner Knowledge Lake. So we'll do that about halfway through today's session.
So we like this slide because I think it really nicely just encapsulates the key pillars of the content services space. I mean, really, what are you doing with content? You want to be able to create, edit it, manage it, and then be able to share it and collaborate. Really, that's what working together is all about, but do it in real time. And then obviously, where the metadata, again, I want to keep emphasizing that in a lot of our points today, is really instrumental and critical to organizing that content, to also helping to drive workflow, to really enable and even automate eventually business processes. And then obviously, once you've got it in the system, you need to be able to get it back out, you need to be able to share it and be able to do stuff with it. And so this is really just a nice way to look at that. And then, as you heard, and we're going to talk about this afternoon in the coordinate piece, the security, how it's being shared, how it's being managed, what the governance is around content. So critical to all of our content services scenarios. And so really that foundational piece, not just the metadata, but also just how do you keep stuff secured and make sure the right people are seeing it.
So more than several years ago, I was doing a presentation. I got to be careful where the hot spots are on these mics.
Yeah.
Doing a presentation about taxonomy and managed metadata services at a user group on the West Coast. Unbeknownst to me, there was a group of library scientists who had been at a classification convention earlier in the day who were sitting in on my session. And they said, that was a great session on taxonomy, but you failed to define your terms up front, and read through the librarian's list of reasons what was wrong with my session. So we're talking about content services today. It's important for us to get this out of the way. What is content services? How is it different, and how does Microsoft think of it differently from what's preceded it, from enterprise content management? Because we think there are some significant differences about what it means for something to be a content services platform. For most of you, you may think about your interaction with Microsoft as being similar to, it's very weird to have the mic right there, being very similar to having a bank. So you give us a file, and when you want it back, we give it back to you. That's like going to a bank vault. That is content storage. And that is the very beginning of what it means for something to be a content services platform.
Don't move too much, Chris.
Don't move too much. I'll stay right here. We think there are at least 3 broad sets of capabilities that a content services platform needs to offer to be able to do something more than just traditional ECM. This is a build slide. There's more builds coming. I love when people take pictures of slides, but I always feel bad when I take a picture and then I add something to it and they have to take another picture. Just consider yourself warned. So John Mancini at AIM, more than 20 years ago, AIM originally came up with the term enterprise content management to define a set of integrated capabilities for the creation, management, protection, and disposal of information assets throughout their life cycle. And ECM has been a landscape for quite a while, and Microsoft SharePoint, especially starting in 2007, was a real disruptor to that landscape for being able to bring ECM services forward. But we think a content services platform needs to be able to offer more. And so these capabilities, we think, we distinguish things that are just always there and always available. The availability of the service, indexing, security. These are capabilities that any platform just has to have always on as a utility service. Then there's a second wave of services that are usually in response to administrative or compliance staff activity. Things like access control and retention, and those are other capabilities of the platform. And then there is a range of things that users themselves need to have the platform support. Things like sharing and search and workflow, things that are triggered by information worker and end user behaviors. All of these things and more together, we think, represent the categories of a content services platform that are important to pay attention to. And all of these things taken together solve exactly 0 business challenges, because none of this gets to how people actually experience the content. So a content services platform also needs to exist being able to drive critical experiences on the platform. Some of those are through the applications, Microsoft's own applications, as well as some of the applications from our partners, as well as devices. What does all of this mean? This means properly done and orchestrated, a content services platform is able to answer questions from people and devices who did not exist when the content was first created. Roll this forward a few years. That means if someone is asking a question of their content repository through the appropriate sequence of blinks on some future HoloLens type device, and the answer to that is actually contained in a document that began life in Word 97 on a compact desktop that happens to have been migrated into the right repositories, the platform can make that there, available, searchable, indexable, securable, distributed, and available in a translated format to someone on a Holo device driving their hovercraft some years in the future. Right? So that's kind of the core of what content services are. Where are we today? We know that we are drowning in data. According to IDC, the planet is expected to be burdened or blessed with over 44 zettabytes of unstructured content by next year. We know that for every bit of structured content, database type files, there's even more unstructured content out there in the universe. Somewhere based on the surveys that we see, between 60 and 80% of all the data out there is unstructured or semi-structured. If we translate that into average file sizes, that's 104 quadrillion with a Q, average size Office documents. Or how many of you are still on-prem? That's enough data to fill 169 billion standard content databases on premises. So there's a lot that we need to be able to catch in the service. And we're continuing to invest in what that looks like. This is our current range of capabilities, 30 million items in a library, 25 terabytes in a site collection. What that really translates into at Office 365 scale is 30 trillion documents per site collection, or 12.5 exabytes, not 30 trillion documents in a site collection.
No, tenant.
30 trillion in a tenant. 12.5 exabytes in a tenant. We know that with things like co-authoring and sharing, that you need more of that capacity. We also, last summer, expanded the amount of baseline capacity 20-fold in every tenant. What that means is for a standard 10,000 person organization, you used to start out with 6 terabytes of storage. We now start you out with 101 terabytes of storage. So we never want storage to be the constraint for how you're able to consume Office 365 services. Sean?
Yeah, so when we're looking at content services, we're going to look at it from the lens of how we're talking about a lot of stuff at the conference. And we know that this is sort of an overview session. There's been already some fantastic content earlier today and yesterday. We'll give you a slide at the end with some recommended sessions to catch up on those and dive into those a little bit deeper. But what we want to do is, again, with that theme around the metadata and then how that translates across the life cycle of the experience, we want to look at the creation, and then the coordination, how you collaborate on these materials, and then really how you find them, how you recover them, how you connect with them, and where that also starts to plug in for those of you who saw some of the stuff where we're starting to infuse intelligence into the experience, into the content of the file itself, but then also providing insights into the environment where you have a library with a lot of content. So really looking at create, coordinate, and connect. So let's go ahead and start jumping into that.
Fancy PowerPoint Zoom features.
Man, there's some intelligence right there, I hope, right?
Yeah, I added value. My work is done. So lots of capabilities across the suite for how we create information and get it into Office 365. Office for us is our principal authoring suite, but that's not the whole realm. We have a burgeoning arsenal of partners and tools and things like the SharePoint migration tool to help you get information into the service, as well as some capabilities inside OneDrive we're going to take a look at right now. So mobile capture is one of our capabilities that allows you to start life with a document with images. We know that there's lots of places where information needs to be created or observed or noted. It may begin as a picture or something on a whiteboard, and being able to use OneDrive to get the OneDrive mobile client to get it into Office 365. Lots of scenarios that are there and available. We'll show you one of these in demo here in just a minute. But the key thing here, we want to carry this thread forward throughout the hour, is metadata is important in the process. The accuracy of metadata captured after the fact is dubious. Yeah. It's hard enough to get users to fill out required properties in the first place, but asking someone to remember what they were doing a week ago is a real challenge. How many of you have heard a scenario like this? So someone needs to go out and take a picture. They need to do a site visit. They're going to take some pictures and capture some stuff of a menu. They're going to have it on their phone. They're going to wait till they get back to their hotel room or their office to email the files to themselves or do some sort of transfer to upload them to a place where they can share them with people. And then they're asked to tag the information one at a time. How many of you think that scenario is likely to be followed strictly and religiously to ensure absolute fidelity of the information? Anyone?
Good.
Okay. I like the thumbs. I like the thumbs down. I think the thumbs down is worth at least a sticker for that. Lots of stickers. Lots of stickers. And so the thing about being able to capture that metadata at the point of origin is it enables precision, and precision is what's instrumental to be able to drive processes throughout Office 365. Because that way, a workflow that you build with Microsoft Flow can make the right branching decisions based on what we see there as to who needs to be informed, alerted, or be asked for an approval later on down the road.
Right. Next one. So another piece that's related to this is templates. We've done a lot of work with templates over the years, but we really are trying to modernize the template experience all up and down the component stack. Oh, what's going on there?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry, I forgot that you were not doing this.
You're presenting, my friend. So I did a lot of work on templating actually at the site level with site designs. You might be familiar, there's some great talks at the conference this week, thank you. There's also some other fantastic templates for components and elements within the site. So we have been rolling out new page layouts and page templates, and those can even be associated with metadata, right? Documents as well. We've had document templates for a long time, but now in the modern experience, we're providing new document templates, and we're actually going to show you also how those can even be provided across the organization. So it isn't enough just to have a template associated with a content type for a particular library, but rather be available across the entire tenant. So we'll take a look at that as well. Next slide. Oh, it is
Okay.
time. It shows on now. You got to.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's actually show what some of this stuff looks like.
Absolutely. So let's see.
Get the phone up. It's on 2, right? I think it's on
We're
2.
on 2.
2.
Okay.
There you go.
That's
Brilliant.
illuminating. Okay, so here I am. I'm in the OneDrive mobile client, and I am going to start by,
You don't have much cord here.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm semi-mobile. I'm going to use the libraries feature to be able to look at what are the shared libraries that are offered to me inside of the client. I'm going to scroll down to my retail site, and I can see a whole bunch of things that are out there. We're going to go grab this, and let's put this in, say, support documents. And so I can use the scan button here.
Actually, no, put this one in ad campaigns.
Okay, let's do this in ad
It's in ad
campaigns.
campaign, sorry. Yes.
Your account has a problem. Sign in. Wrong sign in.
Anybody know any good content management, Joe? Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yes, I have. So let's scan this document. So we can see inside of the OneDrive mobile client, we're using Office Lens technology. And it's going to highlight where we think the document is. And if it needs a flash, it'll take a flash. Take the picture, it'll capture it, it'll do a little bit of cleanup, and it'll square the image off and say, here's what we've seen with this, what would you like to do with it? So it knows that we're in the ad campaign area. We can change what the title of this is going to be. So let's say this is going to be Modern Technology. And we see where I'm saving it to. We can also expose the metadata columns that are available inside of this library. So I can see the status. It says for in review, let's call this one new. Intent, new markets. And assign this to Bob, say. I also have this little toggle switch saying remember it. So if I'm going to take multiple images in a row, I can persist the metadata so I can just snap the picture, apply the metadata that I used over and over and over again. But just save that. I'm just going to upload that automatically into Office 365. And let's come back and take a look at this.
Let's go to 5. Hey, excellent. All right, so the ad campaign library, second file from the bottom, there's that modern tech PDF that Chris just took a picture of and uploaded. Notice that we have actually attached a bunch of that metadata and carried it up into the library. And a lot of these fields, we can even, for example, the market space, we'll show this a little bit later, but that's actually a managed metadata field. So that's even being attached to a back-end controlled vocabulary that essentially can be available for either this content type or any list or library across the tenancy. We can do, in this case, we actually applied a default value, but that could also be edited. So that's great. We have metadata. And part of the structure that also is provided here is the ability to actually, like I mentioned earlier, we can do a bunch of different things with templates. So in this case, with this ad campaign library, one of the things that we have announced and made available is the ability to upload your own document templates to the library. So what I've done here is you'll see that I've actually hidden a lot of the out-of-box file types for things like Visio and Word, Excel, Form, Survey, and I've actually replaced them with some of my own content types. Now some of these content types, document templates, and you'll notice, pay attention to this one here, Flyer. I'm going to show you what this one is in a second. But I've got this list of document templates. I also have page templates. So I'm going to jump back out to just the home page of this retail site where we uploaded that file to. And under new, I can go ahead and I now have these new rich page templates that I can start with out of the box, and they already have some layout and structure, pre-configured web parts and places for me to use. I also have the ability, though, to save my own pages. So I can go ahead and save my own pages and actually put them up into this repository as well, and then take advantage of those. So you'll see that these are saved to the site, and I can utilize those. A new feature that we are also making available is, and this is something that will come out later, is organizational templates. So imagine the ability to actually have a list of templates, and you'll see that same flyer template that I made available as a doc template on that specific library, I can actually also put into the enterprise template gallery. And what's great about that is then when my users go to something like Office Home, instead of just getting a generic set of templates when they try to create a new file from one of the applications, they can go ahead and open that, and there's that flyer. So now I can actually start to ensure that my customers and users within the tenancy are using the corporate templates and not just a generic one, okay? Finally, one other thing, let's go back to that retail site for a moment. Another piece that we are also enabling with things like with Flow and some of the actions that you can do is also start to use documents almost as a template with which to then plug in data through essentially doc assembly, okay? So in this case, let's imagine that I'm working on an ad campaign research project, and I'm gonna go and do something with this micro camera project. I need to go ahead and, I wanna go ahead and select that. And then under the Flow tab, you'll see here that I've got a bunch of custom flows configured for this library, or this list. And notice that first one, create a checklist document. So since I'm gonna go embark on this research project, I wanna go and essentially take this item and put it into a document template that I have that's a checklist document so that my team can start going through the steps necessary to collect the research that they need on this micro camera campaign. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick off that workflow. Bear with us with the network. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and continue and run that flow. Uh-oh. What's happening here? Come on, Carolyn. Oh, that's the connection.
Let me see if I can get.
Do you have it there? All right, if Cameron cannot create this, we'll go ahead and...
We'll see if Lynn can.
You want to try it with Lynn?
So we're in research projects. Let's come back to me.
Yeah. It worked so well 2 hours ago. All right, let's see if Lynn has any better luck than Cameron.
So let's try our autonomous vehicle parking drone. This is going to be a really innovative thing. When your self-driving car needs to find a parking space, it's going to be able to send its own drone out to look around and find a spot. That's really cool. Never going to happen, but really, really cool. I'm sure someone's going to get a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe up on it real soon. Okay, so we've selected the item, we choose the flow, create the checklist document.
Come on, template. Come on, flow. There we go.
Here he is. I've run this flow before. Create the checklist document. And we have an option inside of this flow to notify the project channel. Let's take a look at running the flow. So in the meantime, I can quickly jump over here and show you what that flow looks like.
And then I'll bring up the checklist so we could show people that it is there.
And so that flow is run across the team. Here's the create checklist document flow. And for those of you, we did a session earlier today with Chucks on Flow and Power Apps and the Business Apps tools. Flow is our process automation engine across Office 365. And it is a no-code environment. It's based on the idea of these triggers. In this case, the trigger says, for a selected item, which means I picked something in that list. If I click on it, you'll see it says, something in this list, I have the option of grabbing some information about notify project channel, get a handle to it, and open up a Word template. And all we have to do when we're building the flow out is add this new capability, which will be coming soon into production, where I say, where am I looking, and what's the document that has a template inside of it, and it'll expose, these are the 4 fill-in fields inside of that document, and what do I want to use? Well, I can just drop in the field values from the list item that I selected earlier.
Boom.
And the result is going to be paid off over here. Sean?
Yep, so let's see what that looks like. So again, Chris grabbed this autonomous vehicle parking drone. This list item has a bunch of data, like a review date, an effort, a day's effort, and then it's got a project status and a bit of a summary. So now if we go and look at where that document file got created, check it out, there it is. And if we go ahead and open it up, you'll see that all that metadata that was in that list item got written into the file, into a template. Cool?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, I think we are back to slides. Yes.
So one of the things, again, I want to pay this thread forward. Metadata is essential at every step in the process. When we thought about how to reinvent ECM and taking advantage of Office's great tool sets for capturing and collaborating on information, we wanted to make sure that we didn't repeat the mistakes of ECM. ECM, at its worst, is the single most expensive place to put documents that no one ever needs to look at again in their life. We want to make sure that that same rigor, though, around having structured processes for managing data and process was extended not just to destroying documents when no one's looking at them, but to make sure that I'm bringing that power to the first year, first month, first day of a document's life. Right. So I can build structure in things like template and capture and being able to enrich it with data. Okay. Coordination.
All right.
This is a you and me.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that we don't think that security and compliance is a bolt-on that happens at the end of the process, but something which is intrinsic at all steps in the information journey. For those of you who haven't looked at before our approach to how retention works across Microsoft 365, there is a central dashboard that sits inside of the service that manages sensitivity and retention labels for all the information that's in SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, Teams, Groups, etc., and so on and so forth. The basic idea is that what we call a label defines a retention policy that says this information needs to be kept around for a period of time. And that label is based either on the age of the document, timing from when the document was created, modified, or classified, or on the age of an external event. Sometimes, an employment document may need to be kept for 10 years after I leave the company. And when I sign my contract, no one knows when that date is going to be. Someone may know, but they won't tell me. And so knowing that an external event, which I can either manage through Office 365 or through our APIs, is going to trigger and fire that off. And once those labels are defined, we can apply them automatically to the, based on some of the rules we'll talk about, or I can expose it into document libraries and into the interface to allow users to manually apply it. You can hide the existence of labels even though they control things, but generally we think it's a best practice for users to understand that labels are out there and providing governance, safety, and reliability for their information. Again, it's a superpower of the metadata that we attach this bit of metadata to a document and we're able to enforce retention and records management rules on it. Here's some of the things that are new. Like if you checked in with us on ECM at Ignite, most of this is stuff that's relatively new since then. First, we are now changing the way label enforcement works. How many of you have documents that are important records and still need to be edited in your organization? Raise your hand. So we're introducing that capability. So you will be able to preserve the records that are already in place and at the same time unlock them so people can create new versions and continue to edit in that version chain. So that's a capability that we just announced this week, and it'll be coming into service this summer. I saw a soft little bit of golf applause for that. We know we're in the right room if people are even considering clapping for records management versioning.
We're going to make records management cool again.
Again?
Again.
Another capability we announced this week is we're starting to roll out third-party connectors to allow you to stream information into the service to be able to stitch it up with retention and archiving. Our first wave of connectors for that will support Bloomberg messaging, LinkedIn, Facebook pages, and Twitter. There's also an API so you can add your own things. Again, this is allowed to help you wrap your arms around information that may begin life outside Office 365 so I can bring it in to be able to attach compliance to it. We also have announced this week the first of our automatic classifiers. That'll be applied to email, not to documents. But the first automatic classifier will flag you if there is inflammatory or prohibited language inside of a document.
Racy, I think.
Or otherwise known as, regular dinner table conversation around the McNulty family table when I was growing up. But we see this as both, we'll be shipping more classifiers over time, as well as it's an open framework for you to be able to add your own classifications into the system. We announced this last fall. We've been shipping it this year. the support for using metadata, again, remember that theme before, to automatically drive classification. So you can now, in your automatic labeling rules, you can consume content types or custom columns and use those to set the example. Here in the example I've pinched in here on the screen, we can't walk through it because we have only an hour, we have a rule that says if the content type equals funding, apply this label to all the contents. Right. And so if my funding documents need to be kept for 10 years, we don't even need someone to go in and automatically label. So long as they use the right content type, that labeling will be automatically enforced. Something I'll show you here in a few minutes, hierarchical file plans. So we want this information not just to be rich metadata, but be able to be managed at scale. See 30 trillion documents before. Having 30 trillion separate policies, or even a subset of those, is really hard to manage at scale. So file plans give us a way to organize all of those policies into a hierarchy and be able to make bulk changes to those all at once. We'll take a look at them. One of the things that I can enforce with that is label immutability. For financial services organizations, if you were subject to SEC 17A4 or similar regulations, this is important for you. 20, 30 years ago, the idea of a permanent record was usually driven by worm storage, optical, read once, write many. When we move to the cloud, all of that the capabilities are virtualized. So we have been working with regulatory agencies to recognize how can we put a label so strong on a document that not even administrators can remove it. And we've gotten regulatory authorities to sign off on it, and that's a capability that also exists now in service. Lastly, label analytics. With all of these labels coming in and being able to be managed across this burgeoning arsenal of content, we need to give you telemetry so you can understand what's being applied, where and how, what isn't being found, so you can step in and make administrative actions or have your compliance managers step in and decide if the classifications are correct, being able to review the content and being able to make adjustments if they need to over time. A few other things just with kind of current state of the art. This is not a deep dive in document libraries. Lincoln Damaris has already delivered that session. We encourage you to go look at that recording for what we're doing with libraries and lists. But earlier this year, we began the rollout. It is a long rollout. I'll begin by saying this has not gotten to all tenants yet. For being able to, through document libraries, support bulk check-in, check-out. We've just started the rollout on bulk approvals of documents. Mm-hmm. Signals give you visual cues for things like this document is checked out, this document is missing metadata, this document has been shared. Document sets allow me to aggregate document. We've had them for a while, but modern document sets began rollout in February of this year. And column management, being able to look at a view and customize and being able to add columns between other columns, save the view, drag and drop, all of those capabilities are there. And there's more to come. Through Flow, we'll be adding additional fundamental actions to allow you to do these file management activities to be able to check in, check out, change permissions, build folders, and so on and so forth. So all of that.
And no, we have not forgotten about the managed metadata service. So for all this talk about all the powerful new capabilities and modern labels and analytics and inheritance on sensitivity and retention policies, there's still the managed metadata service. There's still the ability to tag content, to be able to use it to drive workflow, use it to be able to aid in retrieval and discovery of content in your corpus. And unfortunately, this area has not gotten a lot of love in the last couple of years. Our apologies, we're rectifying that. We are spending a lot of time this year working on modernizing. You'll see in the last two things we've been doing, a lot of stuff around analytics, around modernization of the experience, integrating these capabilities like doc sets in libraries. So one of the things we want to do is also do the same with managed metadata services. A lot of capability here with being able to manage controlled vocabularies, hierarchical vocabularies, to manage your content, and also to be able to do things like associate these with enterprise content types. And so these go hand in hand. We're looking at them both. And some of the things that we're doing in addition to, sorry, next slide. I keep switching the wrong one.
I gave you the clicker.
I know, I apologize.
I gave you the clicker.
All right. We're going to modernize the management experience, right? So the term store management tool, as well as the enterprise content type publishing experience. We're looking at modernizing that experience, providing new REST graph APIs. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Sorry, I'm going so fast. I'm not giving you guys a chance to process this. So interoperability as well. We recognize that there's a lot of international standards there that we don't necessarily support very well with the very basic CSV import. So one of the things we're looking at and talking with folks like you about is what types of standards do you wish to have supported so that we can make sure that the system can easily consume those, and then give you the ability to actually have analytics and richer governance on these things so it's easier to manage and also to understand what term sets and what terms in those term sets are actually being used and where, so that you can actually start to identify areas that require attention, cold spots that maybe you can, start to do away with or do other governance activities. And so we're looking at all of that. And then this is also starting to find its way into the content creators and the consumers. We're going to start bringing in managed metadata service columns with new field controls and bringing it into the modern experience. So you'll see more of that later this year. Matter of fact, let's take a look at some of this. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Back on you on 2, I think. Yeah.
Great. Any questions on this so far? I didn't even need to hint. Yes. Is this going to be a good question?
Yes, it's going to be a great question.
From a roadmap perspective, we've seen a lot of things move out of SharePoint into the broader Office Microsoft 365.
Yep.
Right? It seems like there's a lot of things with managed metadata service that could potentially belong outside of SharePoint because they could be applicable to other things as well. When you're talking about taxonomy, folksonomy, et cetera.
Sure.
Is any of that in the plans at all, or we're guessing that managed metadata service will remain a SharePoint thing?
So the way I would answer that is we're looking at it in 2 steps, and obviously customer feedback and what they're looking for will factor into that. But first stop will be to actually improve the APIs to make it available to get access to the investments you've already made in the store where it is. But we are also looking at ways to make that more broadly available across the other workloads. And I think that would start to evolve that story of, hey, great, I don't want to have to manage a bunch of siloed, term stores or master data management dictionaries.
Yep.
Let me kind of bring those things together.
I think that was a great question, doesn't everyone?
I do too.
It's at least worth a pair of socks. Thank you. Okay. Let's get to demo.
All right.
Demo. Okay. So let's show how some of these policies get set up and configured. I'm going to go into the Compliance Center. So we have, over the past 6 months, distinguished the Security Center from the Compliance Center, because one of the bits of feedback we've gotten is that in organizations, especially some of the largest ones, these are different roles in many organizations. So here inside the Compliance Center, under classification, I can take a look at what my labels are. So we can see sensitivity and retention labels. Let me quickly walk you through the act of creating a new label. So let's say I am going to create a new label for employment contracts. Description, EE contracts. This is the administrative description. This is the employment agreements. You will watch a grown man type. Isn't it exciting? Anyway, so the next step allows me to start stitching up elements of the file plan. And so I'll see here I can put in a reference ID. Let's add a new reference ID for this. Let's call this one Legal 001. We can add that. We can choose which department it's for. This is going to relate to legal. If there are categories that are out there, we can say this relates to recruiting and hiring. We can break multiple categories into any of these policies. If there are specific legal authorities that we want to say that this is why that we're doing this, this could be for a legal reason. We can set specific citations if it was Sarbanes-Oxley or any other things. You can add your own. This is just to help you clarify why this policy was being set up in the first place. It's an optional step, but at scale it can really help. It's going to be a retention policy. We're going to structure this for 10 years. And my choices are to figure out what happens at the end of this time. After 10 years, I can automatically delete it. I can trigger a review saying, I want you to send a note to all the executives in the company in 10 years saying, it's time to review this contract. You can put a specific email address in there, but especially for things like 5-year, 10-year, 20-year policy, you're making an assumption that that person is still going to be there and still able to address that. Or we can just say, leave it as is. So no one can delete this content until 10 years go by, but it becomes deletable after 10 years. We want to get this off the system in 10 years, so we'll say it's going to be automatically deleted. And here we can say this is going to be triggered based on when it was created, modified, or tagged, or we can say it's based on an external event. So this is where I would stitch up the capabilities to say this is based on a contract expiration. We see a lot of this, for instance, in the securities industry when people are selling commodities and futures contracts where there's 10-year retention based on fulfillment date, which is a date in the future. And so they have a separate system to be able to wire those up. Here we'll just tag it based on creation date. We'll say this is a record. Saying that it's a record means that it's not just retained, but it also becomes unalterable so long as this label is on the document. We define this, and we create the label. And so we can set up lots and lots of labels that are here and available. We've just set up the employment records. We can see employee records. Once that's done, we can choose to publish or automatically apply them. So publishing labels makes them available for users to consume them wherever we need to be. So we can go pick the label. Let's add the one that we just created. Wait, contracts. And let's take employment contracts. We're done.
We're done.
And now we want to say, where do we want to show it? We can push this everywhere, or we can choose specific locations. So we can choose to send it to specific mailboxes or block it from mailboxes. We can choose specific OneDrives or block it there. We can send it to all the group connected behaviors. In this case, I could choose particular SharePoint sites to push this out to. And so this distribution engine we call a policy. So the policy will enforce the availability of these labels wherever I send it. And it's going to go off, and it can take up to a day for it to get to all the endpoints in a fairly large wizard. I can also choose to a fairly large architecture. I can also auto-apply a label. And again, for auto-apply of a label, I can pick whatever label it is that I have that's out there. And then say, how do I want to consume it? One thing I can do is I can use my query language here. So for specific words or phrases, I could say content type equal contract. And if I have a contract content type in my environment, this will enforce that standard. And then I can then choose to say, here's what the name of this policy is going to be. And again, where do I want to push this to have it be automatically enforced? So there may be some places where I may say, it is perfectly okay for me to have financial contracts, but I only want them to be in the CFO's OneDrive and in the finance site. And any place else, I may have different encryption rules to prevent those things from getting there. So you have a lot of flexibility for how I stitch up those policies.
And you can actually start to see how this plays into some of the modernization stuff I was mentioning with content types and the rest of the managed metadata service, where we want to move away from that notion of anytime you create enterprise content types, they get pushed to all sites regardless of what that site's intent is. The finance team doesn't need all the legal content types on their site, right? So trying to work this into the system so that you can actually have more control to target where those content types get delivered to is an area that we're looking to connect here.
Get back to
all right, we got to get Aaron
Admin
on
Center.
stage here, my friend.
Yep. Yeah, I'm watching time. So, what time are we at? We are at 15 minutes to go. So,
all right, I want to show you one
let's
quick
roll
thing
yep.
before we jump into the next segment. Where I'm on 5.
Yes,
I'm on 5.
you're
Excellent.
at 5.
So, as I mentioned, some of the managed metadata service work is still, very much in play. We'll have more to share with you guys later this year, but we are already starting to make some improvements, and I just wanted to show you one of them. So, real quickly, I have in here in this beautiful term store that's going to get a lovely facelift soon. You'll see that I have this general business taxonomy, and you'll see in this marketing node, I have a whole bunch of subnodes. And what's really, that's great, I've got this wonderful taxonomy, but now if I go into a library where I've actually got this managed metadata field attached to this market column, one of the challenges we have today is being able to show you that whole list of terms and all the in that particular node or even in that term set that's mapped to this field. Well, we are building some new interfaces to make filtering much easier, and you can see what this looks like. If I go ahead and select that document that Chris uploaded earlier in the session, and I bring up the filter pane, you'll see there that I am now showing not just the top level of that node, but I now, in a more modern affordance here, but I also have this see all affordance that allows me to actually go and dig in and get into those deeper taxonomies and nodes. And so that's just some of the pieces that are coming to play that are bringing taxonomy to your modern experience. Thank you. All right.
So, without further ado, let's invite Aaron to come up on the stage and join us.
Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
awesome.
Can we hear you in the back?
Come on over here, Aaron.
Oh.
Yeah, please. No, it's okay, you're fine.
So, Aaron, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about Brookfield and what your role is at Brookfield?
Yes, so I am the Director in Program Management at Brookfield, specifically for the HR and legal departments. So my main focus is working with them on their technology solution strategy, as well as managing the technology budget for them, and really working with them to think beyond the normal day-to-day, like how can we improve your business processes?
And Brookfield, could you describe kind of why they may be far more familiar than people may even know of them?
So Brookfield Properties is a conglomerate of companies, really. So we have different divisions. I represent the core retail group, and we are rank among the largest retail real estate companies in the U.S. So we have over 146 million square feet of properties. And here in Las Vegas, Fashion Show Mall is one of our properties. So
Nice.
we have a lot of high-end properties that we manage, lease, and redevelop.
So something you and I have spoken about is long-term commercial property leases are not like signing a car lease.
Oh, no.
No. So they're more than 2 pages typically, yes?
They're about 75
Yep.
pages, if not longer, depending on the property, and heavily negotiated.
So let's talk. Can we talk a little bit kind of about the journey that you've been on around legal records management? Because when we reviewed this, we looked at it and we looked at this slide and we looked at, wow, this looks really complex. And then we realized this is probably like the journey most organizations are on at some point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our long journey that I
Yep.
would say we've been on. So essentially, as you can see on the slide, in 2015, we started the whole RFP process. We really didn't have a records management system, weren't really into the ECM space and wanted to get into it. So we originally decided to do an on-prem solution, and as most companies, we got a new leader, a new technology leader, so strategy changes. And so we really wanted to go into let's stop using on-prem, let's go into the cloud-based. We had SharePoint Online, so we really wanted to figure out how we could utilize that. Got a whole bunch of consultants. Our leader was like, I want to get rid of consultants, I want to bring in-house resources, so we did all of that. And then we're finally here to set strategy. So then we set strategy, and we know how long setting strategy can take sometimes, so that took a little bit of time. Once we set the strategy and got some internal resources, somebody decided we're going to do a lot of custom SharePoint development. As you guys know, custom development can be good, it can be bad, it can be indifferent. So we went down that road and realized we're spending a lot of money and don't necessarily have the internal capital and resources that can help to maintain that custom development. So I was brought onto the project because it was affecting my business stakeholders and my manager. We sat down and we're like, wait, let's rethink this. Let's find a partner that works well with SharePoint Online, that has some out-of-box features and functionality for us, and can help maintain.
Right.
So then we found Knowledge Lake.
So Aaron, so at what point did you join this timeline?
I joined, let me see. I was a little bit in there in 2017, probably really jumped in 2018, took a step back, came back in. I had team members on the team, but when the project started to go awry, they were like, Aaron, jump in. So I jumped in 2018.
So the project, from first concept to getting it launched, is 4 years.
Yes.
But it wandered for 3 years, and then you joined.
Yes.
And that was one of the keys to the success.
I would say that along with the team.
Okay.
It was more so just really driving to what the end project goal was. I think people were losing sight of that. So my business stakeholders, we were trying to replace an old on-prem solution that I like to joke and say was held on by a paperclip, and it was a security risk. So I wanted people to understand you don't always have to have the bells and whistles when you first launch. Let's give them a minimal viable product. Let's get the product out the door, and then we can build upon that. So really driving home to that goal.
So you've been able to modernize an antiquated at-risk system. It was delivered first quarter of this year.
Yes.
And what's the user feedback been so far?
It has actually been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, with any system, you do have your feedback of, I wish it did this and I wish it did that. But a lot of the feedback we've actually been getting has been more of those, what I like to call bells and whistles, the enhancements. They really like the search functionality with Knowledge Lake. It offers up different ways for them to search the information, whereas in the past they had one way to do it.
Right.
And they were just offered up that information. So they really appreciate that. Our 2 power users that actually get all of our documents into the system, it's very easy for them to use. It's not, they have a way to get electronic documents in the system. Before, if you had an electronic document, we had to print it and scan it back in. Oh. I know that is like, I cringe every time I hear about that. So we're now able to just get electronic executed documents directly into the system without having to print them.
You see, but now we could have you print it, scan it back in, and then take a picture of the scan to get it in. No, I'm just.
Let's not do that.
So you're in production, users are happy.
Yes.
Obviously, there's more to come. If you had this whole process to do over again, what would you do differently? What would Aaron today tell Aaron in the past? You should do this sooner.
It would to be, number one, find a partner earlier on in the process.
Okay.
Not just go down the custom development route or assess if that's the right thing to do. I don't know that assessment was really done in the beginning.
And the partner that you found, and hint, they're in the front row. Who's the partner you found?
Knowledge Lake.
Okay, thank you.
Knowledge Lake. And then I would also say really understanding what the goal is, the true business requirements, and keeping to that. Sometimes projects, especially if they're long projects, can take a tangent and go in a different direction, but really sticking true to those requirements and those goals, and understanding that you can take on new feedback, but you can put that in the backlog, as we like to call it,
Right.
and do it later.
And so this was not the first information records management project Knowledge Lake had done, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
They're a trusted partner in the space.
So what's next for you and for records management at Brookfield?
What's next? We actually just, since I've been here, actually implemented our automated retention policy. So that's a huge win for us because we had tens of thousands of documents never getting deleted and going past our retention policy. So we're doing that. I was actually speaking with Knowledge Lake. We have our HR records that we actually want to get into the system and be able to automatically tag based on that, put it in the correct employee folder, and set up retention policies around that as well. So
That's great. Well, we're happy that Office 365 has been able to help, and we're happy that you've found a great partner in that. And thank you so much for coming up here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
Aaron, everyone. So we're going to try to wrap this up in something less than 4 years.
Let's do it. Something less than 4 years. How about 3?
Yep.
All right.
We had Knowledge Lake help us out with a document before, so hopefully
now
we
we're
can
gonna be even
accelerate
faster.
it at this
That's
point.
right. And we still have 1 pair of socks.
Still have one pair of socks.
One more really good question. Yeah. All right.
So,
the last piece.
Last piece.
Search. Go.
So it's important not just to be able to get information in and classified and managed, but also how are we going to be able to use and reuse that to expose it in new ways? As we announced last fall, and with more details coming at Build earlier in the month, Microsoft Search will be coming soon. Microsoft Search is, for us, the next generation of being able to construct a unified view of all the information that lives in your information estate within Office 365 and beyond. As we talked about at Build, we also envision that Microsoft Search reaches out through connectors to be able to index and display information from things that live outside Office 365. Our first connector will be a file share connector, which will be moving into private preview later this year. Microsoft Search is based on the idea, let's use the power of Microsoft Graph to expose all the information from whatever endpoint you're in a unified index. So that obviously if I'm inside of Outlook, we can contextually understand how to personalize the responses for you. And if you're looking for the word Contoso, you probably want to see messages first, but I should be able to broaden and show that search. Microsoft Search also will include support for enhancements and refiners, being able to show inline display of highlighted things. It is based, as we talked about in the keynote yesterday, on SharePoint Search. So there's no distinction between SharePoint Search and Microsoft Search. Microsoft Search represents the next generation of SharePoint Search and is able to tap in with intelligence to information that's stored inside conversations or inside file formats that traditionally were locked up. Digital boxes like image or video or audio files, you're going to be able to search those as well.
And some of what really helps that is a lot of the cognitive services that we're bringing not just to SharePoint, but really to Office 365. You saw some of that demonstrated during the keynote yesterday, and Naomi also did a wonderful overview of a lot of the many services, the cognitive services that are available today and that we're looking to bring into the product to aid you in your search, being able to, as we show here, being able to extract data from files and images. Imagine you being able to get text from PDF files and other scanned images. And then really starting to bring this into how we start to train the system to understand your content and be able to help you, not just in, again, bringing back the metadata, to extract that metadata and write that back into the libraries to aid in your workflow processes, but also in your search and discovery. And then you'll see here, even in some of the other file formats, things like videos and audios and meetings, being able to do the auto transcription. So do we have time for a quick demo?
We have time for a lightning round of demos.
Lightning round demo, awesome.
So here we have a standard document. It happens to be written in Latin.
Everyone read that? Yeah.
By the way,
You
Latin.
definitely get the socks.
Bing Translate can speak two varieties of Klingon, but it can't speak Latin. So I'm not quite sure what this says other than...
That just shows you developer bias. Yeah. It's not. No meaning, yeah. There you go. I think.
So one of the places where we're exposing information for Microsoft Search filtered by the graph is by being able to insert document items. So here in my login, when I can see bits of documents that are out there. I can search for them. I can also expose to see what content happens to be sitting inside of this file. So I can see a picture of content services. When I say I want to insert it, I'm going to grab I don't have to open the whole document, and I don't have to bring the whole bit in. I can just choose to grab single elements of that document and insert them to help me connect the information that I want to create with the information that's come before. It's just a simple example of how we're able to use Microsoft Graph to empower creativity throughout the Office suite. I know that we're short on time, so we want to press on. Yeah, I know, we have until 8.
You guys are dedicated. All right. We're here till 8. No.
So we want to help you put some of this in context, because obviously Sean and I are going to come up here and tell you this is the greatest thing in the world. But you don't have to just take our word for it. One thing we're particularly proud of is we submit our capabilities every year to analyst firms who maintain public research reports on ourselves and our top competitors. We are really happy to be in the upper right-hand corner of both of these reports. The Forrester Wave report for business content services and the last two Gartner Magic Quadrants for what they call content services, enterprise content management. We're in the upper right-hand quadrant. Gartner recognized us as best in the world for our ability to execute on what our vision is. You can download those reports. Those are available publicly through the URLs we have here, as well as through our resource center. Brad Smith, our president and chief legal officer, makes sure that we stay at the forefront of protecting your data, your privacy, your security, and ensuring your compliance, and make sure that we're at the forefront of the industry, making sure that we pursue every available certification so we can be transparent about how we protect your data. And so all of this is available on the Office 365 Trust Center. Oh, thank you. Additionally, we have a number of partners that we want to recognize. We have our content services partner program is entering its 3rd year this summer. There are a handful of partners who we recognize for excellence in what they're able to deliver. These They're selected based on proven, verified customer success in each of these areas to get the badge that says that they're Microsoft preferred across advisory and implementation services and all the rest of the capabilities that are out there. If you are a partner and you're interested in this program, there are many benefits. There's more details available online, but the program application period is open for another week or so. Another week. Through the 31st. So please check with us online. It's a growing program. We're investing a lot in both the technology and the support and services that we have available to our partners to help deliver these solutions to our customers.
Let's jump to the roadmap after
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
You may already be a success. If you're here at MGM, you're connected to one of these success stories. MGM Resorts International was able to migrate all of their usage in legacy cloud platforms into Office 365, both using our services as well as our partner SkySync. So let's jump forward. We'll make this deck available.
Yeah.
I want to just speak very quickly where we are in the roadmap.
We do have a roadmap, yes. So a lot of these capabilities, we want to make sure that you guys saw this slide. It will be available, obviously, in the deck materials. But there's a bunch of pieces that we've talked about today and shared with you that are coming soon. We're also looking at some additional verticals, and some of the modern metadata pieces that I talked about will be coming later this year. And then finally, there's a bunch of additional capabilities that really expand on what we've been sharing with you guys this afternoon that are top of mind, and we're actively working on these areas. Love to get your feedback and questions around this space so that we can continue to evolve the service offering the way that you need it.
Hints about questions.
Oh, yes, we need one more question.
So we need one more question. Yes, right here, sir.
It should. I think it.
When you copy a new list from one to the other, yes, it includes content types. So that's a great question. Thank you. So we know that we are right at time. Sean and I are going to stick around for questions. Who needs a t-shirt cannon?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.